Hey guys, Ryan with E5 Sigma here, and today we're going to be working with Unified Talk. We're going to connect it to a third-party SIP provider. This is something that I've seen out there a couple of times, people asking questions on how to do this, and there's not really any clear documentation. So I figured that I would go and make an instructional video here and show you how to do it. Now we're going to be working with a Dream Machine Pro that already has Unified Talk on it. You can, of course, be running Unified Talk Cloud, Raspberry Pi, on a different server, something like that. But the process here is going to stay the same no matter where Unified Talk is installed. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to go over to the Unified Talk application that we've got running on our Dream Machine Pro. We're going to go into the settings area. Now from here, we're just going to take a look at what we've got in advanced settings. Now, to add in a third-party SIP provider, today we're going to be using a provider that supports IP-based authentication instead of registration. In the testing that we've done, we've found this to be a bit more reliable. In order to do that, we have to enable the static SIP signaling port, which will make all of the SIP messages expected to come in on port 6767 UDP. You'll have to configure those ports to be the same thing. They'll have to match on your SIP provider side when you create the trunk. Now, this also assumes that you've already done that. You've already created the trunk from your SIP provider. This is just connecting Unified Talk to that provider. We're going to use add additional SIP provider. We'll just put in a name. We'll call it provider. Now, what's important here is we have to add all of the custom fields that the provider expects in order to negotiate SIP handshake. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some of the most common ones here. Now I've tried this with a couple of different providers and it works just fine. So we're going to add in a field. The first one that we need is proxy. This is going to end up holding the IP address for the actual SIP provider that you want to use. Looks like that didn't save, so we need to put it in there again. All right, next will be context. And we'll fill out the values to these after we get them all added. Right now, we're just adding them into the system so that Unified Talk knows that we need to send these fields over to the provider. Register. Username. Extension. From user, from domain, retry seconds. Make sure that you note that this is an underscore in retry seconds, not a hyphen if you put in everything else there. And then expire seconds. Done. Let's just double check and make sure that's all of the fields that we need. So now we can come in and we can start filling in these values. So for right now, I'm just going to use example values here. So I'm going to use 1.2.3.4. Context will be public. Now this 1.2.3.4 that I put in the proxy, you would use the IP address for whomever your SIP provider is. This is information that they would be giving you. For password, I just put in the word password. It seems to want a value in there for some reason. But we're going to set register to false. We're using IP-based authentication. For the username, again, this will be information that your SIP provider gives to you, either through example configuration files or other documentation. So I'm just going to use the generic username. Extension is usually left blank. From-user usually matches the same username that you're using in the username field. And for from domain, some providers are a little bit different. Some want to see the same exact IP address that you've got here for the provider, and others want to see the IP address that you have allowed as far as your static IP address that your SIP signaling is going to come from. That's what I usually put in. So for here, I'm just going to, again, put in a generic 4.3.2. Again, this is the public IP address of our Dream Machine for retry seconds, set 30, expire seconds, set 60. Next, we're going to set the destination countries that we want this trunk to be able to call to. We're using this strictly for US-based calling at this point, so we'll add the United States to the mix and just hit save. We'll also want to add in any DID numbers that have been added to this trunk in your SIP provider. Unified Talk expects these numbers to be in E164 format, so that would be a plus and a country code, then the area code, then the exchange, and the rest of the phone. We add that in as well. Then the last value that we need to put in here is the access control list IP range. This should match the IP address of the proxy. This is telling the Dream Machine that we want to be able to communicate with this IP address for these purposes. So I'll just paste that in here. It's a /32. In this particular case, it's only one IP address that we're connecting to. We add, hit save, and that's that. So now you're connected to that SIP provider through Unified Talk. The last part of this would be to go to numbers and then choose this phone number that we've put into the system, just added, click assign, and then you choose the user that you want to assign that number to, its corresponding device, hit confirm. If you've done everything right, you should be able to then place a phone call from your Unified Talk phone out to a public telephone number. And you should also be able to place a call from a public telephone number to the phone number that you've added here in Unified Talk. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Also, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel. And if you have any other issues or questions that you'd like us to maybe make a video about, it doesn't have to be limited to Unified Talk, but just let us know, and maybe we'll throw something together for you and help you guys out. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.